Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Quran Precision. In this video, we're going to talk about the letters of the throat in Arabic. So this will be an overview of the letters that come from the throat. So some other general places of articulation that we produce speech sounds from are, for example, the lips, and this is where our ba and our fa come from. So either both of the lips or one of the lips. The tongue, so letters like dal, sheen, lam, kaf, and so many other letters come from the tongue. And then we have the throat. So in Arabic, we have 6 letters that come from the throat. So that's hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, and kha. So before the throat, the structures that you see here, up here you have the lips, then you have the teeth, then you have the roof of the mouth. It's kind of like the bony part of the roof of the mouth, then the soft part of the roof of the mouth. This whole thing is your tongue, and then back here is your throat. So in the throat, there are 3 main articulation points in the study of tajweed. So we're going to divide the throat into 3 sections. The first one, I'm going to call the upper throat. The second one is the middle throat. And the third one is the lower throat. Now, this is not the official terminology. So if you study tajweed, you'll see that the upper part of the throat is called adna al-halq, and that means the closest part of the throat. So the part that's closest to the mouth or closest to the lips. Then the middle of the throat is called wasatul halq, which literally means the middle of the throat. And then you have aqsa al-halq, which means the furthest part of the throat. So the part of the throat that's furthest away from the mouth or furthest away from the lips. So this is an MRI image of basically what we just saw in the last slide. It's not super clear, but I want to make sure that we can see what we're looking at. So right here in the front, we have the lips, you have the teeth, the roof of the mouth. This whole thing is the tongue, and this whole section is the throat. The reason I want you to be able to see what we're looking at here is because later in this video, we're going to go through some MRI videos of a person producing sounds that come from these parts of the throat. The upper throat. The letters that come from the upper throat are ghayn and kha. The upper throat is at the level of the soft palate and the back of the tongue. And these 2 sounds are produced by raising the back of the tongue up toward the soft palate, producing friction as the sound comes through. The ghayn and the kha are mostly the same, but they have one big difference. So the ghayn and the kha have the same articulation point. The back of the tongue goes up towards the soft palate. But for both of these letters, you want to make sure not to press too hard. So you don't want to block the sound from coming through. You don't want to take your tongue and push it up against your soft palate, blocking the sound and making the sound kind of force its way through. It shouldn't sound blocked. So for example, you don't want it to sound like ugh. That's too much. You're doing too much. Or you don't want the ghayn to sound like ugh. That's also too much. They should sound more like l and ugh. So where they come from is pretty much the same, but what makes them different is the voicing. So for ghayn, the voice is on, meaning that your vocal cords are vibrating as you're saying the letter. If you put your hand on your throat, you should feel it vibrating as you're saying L. You should feel a vibration in your throat. And for kha, same thing. If you put your finger on your throat, you shouldn't feel any vibration. The voice is off, meaning that your vocal cords are not vibrating as you're saying the letter. So it's more of a whispered sound. Now we're going to look at some MRI videos, but there's an important caveat before we get into that. The individual in this video who's producing the sounds is not specifically producing our Quranic Arabic letters. He's just going to be producing sounds, general sounds from this part of the throat. So the sounds that he's going to be making will sound pretty similar to our Arabic letters, but they might sound different due to slight differences in articulation or differences in characteristics or the manner in which the sound is made. The purpose of showing these videos is just to get an idea of the part of the throat that's used in the production of these letters. But please do not attempt to imitate these sounds directly from the MRI video that I'm going to show for the purpose of learning Arabic throat letters. So just to remind ourselves what we're looking at, this whole thing is the tongue, and this is the roof of the mouth, and this is a soft palate right here. It's lowered right now. So we're going to be focusing on what's happening here at the upper part of the throat. So you'll notice that the back of the tongue lifts up and it gets really close to that soft palate. You might also notice that the soft palate raises and goes back to the wall of the throat as well, blocking off the sound from being able to go into the nasal cavity. The main thing that you should see here is the back of the tongue going up towards the soft palate. Next we have the kha. So you should see the back of the tongue do something very similar to what you saw in the ghain. Let's watch.
Aha. Aha. Aha.
Okay, so same thing. You see the back of the tongue lifts up and it goes up towards the soft palate. All right, now that we know what the ghain and the kha should look like when they're being produced, let's try to use them in words. If you'd like, you can repeat after me. غافل الغيب المغضوب خا خالدين إخوة مخمصة. The middle part of the throat. So the letters that come from the middle of the throat are ayn and ha. And the middle of the throat is right at the level of the epiglottis. So the epiglottis is this flap right here that can be pushed back towards the wall of the throat. A primary function of the epiglottis is actually to protect our airway during swallowing. So the epiglottis will go down, blocking the airway so that food and water doesn't go down the wrong way. But in Arabic, we use this part of the throat to produce the ayn and the ha. So when we're producing the ayn and the ha, the epiglottis gets pushed toward the wall of the throat, which narrows the passage in the throat. But make sure not to close this space. So you want to let the sound squeeze through without ever blocking it off. It's very common that people tend to block off the sound, especially for the ayn. So make sure that although you're narrowing the space, you're never closing it completely. So the ayn and the ha have the same articulation point, but they have a couple of differences. So the first one, similar to the difference between the ghain and the kha, is voicing. So for ayn, the voice is on. For ha, the voice is off. Ah. Ah. So if you're having trouble with, let's say, the ayn sound, but you're actually able to produce the ha sound, the ha is actually a good starting point. So get yourself at that ha and then turn your voice on and see if it turns into a ayn. So if I start at ha, ah, and turn your voice on. Or vice versa, ah, and turn your voice off. Another main difference is in the natural length of these sounds. So for the ayn, it has kind of a medium length. But for the ha, the sound runs. Its natural length is a little bit longer. Okay, so for ayn, ah, it has some length, but I can't really hold it out for a long time. The ha, ah, it's easy for the sound to run. So for the ayn sound, now we're going to be focusing on the middle of the throat. Now remember, you will still see the soft palate move. It'll go back towards the wall of the throat in order to block the sound from going up to the nose. But that's not where the sound is created. We're going to be looking in this area in the middle of the throat to see what happens for the ayn. So this one might be a little bit harder to see, but what's happening is the root of the tongue is pushing the epiglottis back so that this space right here between the epiglottis and the wall of the throat is narrow. Now, what will it look like if I push my epiglottis back all the way to the wall of the throat and I actually touch the wall of the throat? Let's watch. So right here you see there's no space between the epiglottis and the wall of the throat. If you do that, it'll create the sound that you just heard this person say. You're fully touching the wall of your throat, blocking off the sound, which is not our Arabic ayn. And just another side note, again, we said that this is not an actual ayn sound. This is just a general sound that comes from the middle of the throat. However, he is making the sound very heavy. He's saying, ah, ah. That's not what we have in Arabic. We say, ah, ah, ah. We have a light ayn. Now let's look at the ha sound. So this is again going to look very similar to the ayn. We're looking at the middle of the throat.
Aha. Aha. Aha.
Right here, you're seeing that this space is very narrow. So the tongue and the epiglottis moved back, and the space in the throat is narrow, producing that ha sound. And if it seems like it doesn't really look like anything is happening, let's compare it to when the space is not narrowed. So this is what it looks like when the space in the throat is not narrowed at all. So the epiglottis is not going towards the wall of the throat. So this is your starting position, and then it turns into a ha.
Aha.
Okay, now that we know what the ayn and the ha look like when they're being produced, let's try to say words that have these sounds. For ayn, alimun, a'udhu. Make sure that you're making that hamza sound different than the ayn sound. Separate the two sounds. A'udhu, na'budu, ha, halimun, nahnu, zuhziha. The lower part of the throat. So the two letters that come from this part of the throat are the hamza and the ha. And these letters are produced at the level of the vocal cords. So we're concerned with what's happening at the glottis. The glottis is the space between the vocal cords. So these two letters are produced by narrowing or closing the space between the vocal cords. So the hamza and the ha have the same articulation point, the space between the vocal cords or the glottis. But what's happening at the glottis is what differentiates these two letters. So if I was looking from up here down into the throat, this is the view that I would have of the vocal cords. This is the vocal cords when they're closed, and this is the vocal cords when they're open. So for the hamza, the vocal cords come together fully, blocking the sound completely. So this picture that you see on the right side is what happens when we're producing the hamza. So they close completely, blocking off the sound fully. Ya, ba, ta, tha. So you should feel in the lower part of your throat that it's completely blocked off. For the ha, the space between the vocal cords is narrowed, but they don't fully come together. So it's not going to be completely open like it is when we're breathing, which is this picture right here. And it's not going to be completely closed. It's somewhere in between. So they're going to come together, not fully. It'll just narrow the space between the vocal cords, producing friction as the sound comes out. Ah, ah. Now let's look at the hamza. For this one, we're going to be looking at the lower part of the throat. Now, again, you will see some movement happening at the upper part of the throat, when the soft palate goes back to the wall of the throat and blocks the sound from coming up to the nose, okay? But this is not where the hamza sound is produced. We're looking down towards the lower part of the throat. So there's movement happening at the lower part of the throat. The next letter is ha. You're going to see some movement happening at the lower part of the throat. However, what exactly is happening is not very clear from this angle, but let's watch it anyways.
Aha. Aha. Aha.
Okay, that was obviously a very heavy ha. Our ha in Arabic is not heavy like that. We don't say aha, we say aha, aha. All right, now that we know what the hamza and the ha look like when they're being produced, let's say some words. أأنتم. Make sure that you're pronouncing each hamza. آباؤكم. يشاء. You can feel the closure happening at the vocal cords. Pay attention to the ha in these words. The ha is a very weak letter. It has a lot of weak characteristics. So really take care of the ha as you're pronouncing these words. هذا يهدي. The end of this word is going to be pronounced as a ha because we're going to be stopping on it. رحمة. Really notice the difference between that ha and then that ha. So you should feel that they come from a different part of the throat. The ha comes from higher up in the throat at the middle of the throat, and the ha comes from lower in the throat. If they feel like they're coming from the same place, then it probably means that one is being produced incorrectly. Rahmah. All right, so those are our throat letters in Arabic. Some considerations before we end this video. Not all languages have the same sounds. So for example, because we're speaking in English, let's look at English. English has a lot of similar letters to Arabic. So for example, you have the B sound using the lips, which we also use in Arabic. You have the T sound using that front of the tongue. You have the Y sound, the ya in the middle of the tongue. Then you have the K sound. And that's almost as far back as it goes until way down in the lower throat, we have the H sound, h. But the upper throat is not touched at all in our speech in English. And the middle of the throat is also not used in our speech. So if English is your native language, or if you speak another language that doesn't use certain parts of the throat like Arabic does, be patient with yourself. It can take time, but know that you can learn these sounds. Because if you're human, you use these parts of your throat all the time to create sounds. It might not be sounds specific to speech, but we do produce sounds from all of these different parts of the throat, even if we're not fully aware of when we do it. So for example, the upper throat, if someone snores, what's happening there? The back of the tongue is going up towards the soft palate. Another sound that we make from the upper part of the throat is if you're frustrated or upset, you might do like a Everyone might make a slightly different sound, but you might make a sound that comes from the upper part of the throat. Are these sounds going to sound exactly like our kha and our ghain? No, but at least we know that we can move these parts of our throat. For the middle part of the throat, if it's a really hot day and you're really thirsty and you chug your water, set down the water and you go, that's you using the middle of your throat. And in fact, it's actually a pretty good ha sound. Or if someone punches you in the gut and you go, oh, that's also using the middle of the throat. Something close to a ayn sound, but not quite. So as humans, we're constantly making these sounds using different parts of our body, but we might not be aware of what we're doing. So we just need to learn to be more conscious about it and then fine-tune that movement. Okay, to recap, and it's probably a good idea to screenshot this. In Tajweed, the throat is divided into 3 parts. You have the upper part of the throat, which is where the ghain and the kha come from, and this is when the back of the tongue raises up towards the soft palate. Then we have the middle part of the throat, and that's where the ayn and the ha come from. And here the epiglottis is pushed towards the wall of the throat, narrowing the passage in the throat. And then we have the lower part of the throat, and that's where the hamza and the ha come from, where we narrow or close the space between the vocal cords. All right, my throat is hurting, so we'll leave it there. That's it for this one. Thank you. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking for more learning and practice, go to speechprecision.com to schedule your free pronunciation assessment. I'll be able to tell you exactly what you need to improve your Quran recitation and pronunciation.